Okay, everybody, I'm excited about today's conversation with Spenser Brassard. Did I say it right? Brassard. Brassard. Brassard, right?
Yes, there we go.
I wrote it out phonetically, but then like my
Your brain kicked in.
yeah. And I'm so excited to talk to her. I know that we've had podcasts on fertility before, but she is a fertility expert coach and she has her own podcast. She also wrote a book called Fertile Ground, a mind body approach to getting pregnant without it taking over your life. She's a creator of Fertility Mind-Body Mastery, a program that helps women how to harness the power of the mind body connection that replaces restriction with expansion and shame with compassion. And this is what blew me away is 70% of the women who work with you get pregnant within a year. And those who don't get pregnant yet are living happier, more fulfilling lives. That's
Mm,
that's an amazing statistic to have. I
it
actually just got
is.
goosebumps because so
Oh.
many people are on this journey and looking for answers, and it might not be as easy as just going to a fertility clinic,
Mhm,
or even it might not be as easy as just making some lifestyle changes. So
mhm,
that to me is an amazing statistic. So I would love for
mhm.
you to share what got you into this work.
Yeah, well, I was on the journey myself and it was so hard, right? It was just full of suffering and shame and feeling super small compared to people who got pregnant so quickly. And then, of course, after a year goes by, and I was in my mid 20s, right? So I was young, I was healthy. And, after a year, we got diagnosed with unexplained infertility. And so, of course, I wasn't ready for treatment at that point because I just wasn't. And we did all of the natural changes that you can make. We did the diet, we did the acupuncture, we did the natural path, we did the hormone testing, we did Clomid, I did psychics, I did tarot card readers, I did Reiki. What didn't I do is actually a better question.
Mm-hmm.
And so I embarked on this journey of doing everything possible to try and get pregnant and feeling farther and farther away from myself, though, feeling farther and farther away from my happiness and my joy. And I came upon a life coach named Martha Beck, Dr. Martha Beck, and she was actually on Oprah in the 90s. And she was Oprah's life coach. And she is a Harvard grad, but she's into spiritual woo-woo. Like she really loves talking about energy and meditation, but she's very rooted in science and logic and research. And I thought that was such a beautiful complement of each other. So I started taking my life coach certification because I thought I've always been interested in psychology, but I thought, interestingly enough, I would love to just learn how to be happier on this journey to my baby. I would love to take away this suffering. Even if it's not time for me to get pregnant yet, I want to learn how to be happier. And so one of the topics we dove into in the certification was the mind and body approach. And just light bulbs went off. I was like, oh my God, could this be it? Right. And got my certification and eventually, believe it or not, started coaching as a fertility coach. I had realized that even if I hadn't gotten pregnant yet, I had learned to stop suffering. I had started getting my life back. I had started to feel like I had a healthy sense of control over my life despite not being pregnant. And I thought, oh my God, more women need to know that it isn't just this awful road you have to claw your way out of. There is another way to your baby. And so I started coaching, and eventually women got pregnant. And if they weren't getting pregnant, they were getting happier. And I was like, oh my God, this really works. And a couple years after that, I had tried IVF, finally had felt ready. And unfortunately, that ended in a miscarriage. And then a few months after that, I did a frozen embryo transfer, and that didn't work. And I was heartbroken, but I had built such belief in and trust in my journey that I knew it would happen. I just had that quiet knowing that it would happen. And so, although the FET didn't work, and there was so much evidence telling me, like from a physical perspective, that chances are it wouldn't. 2 months after that, after practicing everything that I teach and everything that's in my book, Fertile Ground, I got pregnant naturally. And then he's now 4 years old. Now, that was after an 8-year-long fertility journey. But I believe that the fertility journey can be a catalyst to remembering who you are, remembering who you came here to be, remembering the woman and the mother you are meant to be in this lifetime. I didn't want to create a lot of the patterns that were instilled in me. I wanted to break a lot of that. I wanted to find my worth regardless of having a baby on my hip. And that has served me so greatly in my life as a mother, because I can hold space for my children, because I now have two. I got pregnant with my second first try. And I can hold space for me. I prioritize me. And that is like one of the greatest gifts I think we can give ourselves as women. And my fertility journey, although the hardest thing that ever happened to me, was also the best. And so I wrote a book about it and I developed a program around it. And I've worked with hundreds of women from all over the world into connecting their minds with their bodies to help them get happy and get pregnant.
Mm-hmm. And again, the statistics like just coming back to me like 70%. I just feel like that's so amazing. Because we know that just even the way that we're living our lives now, we're so disconnected from ourselves.
Yes.
And it starts before we become moms, and then it leads into motherhood. Like it's so easy to be disconnected from ourselves, even from our children. Becoming a mom, so many things in your life come up that you need to work on, because your kids are like mirrors. They're like, hey, Mom, you have issues. And you're like, oh,
they don't say that, but
no,
they definitely mirror that. Exactly.
Totally.
I think one of the ways that causes that disassociation, and tell me where I'm wrong, Elizabeth, is like how fast we're moving through life.
Oh, totally.
And we're just always chasing that next big shiny thing, right? And so that was my pattern. And then, I was like, hey, I'm going to find a guy. And I found the guy. And then I'm like, hey, I'm going to buy a house. I'm going to buy a house. Kate, I'm going to get pregnant. No. So it's like, okay, who am I? What is my life if I am not chasing something, right? And so I think that's where we can learn to come back to ourselves, is slowing down. And I mean, children are wonderful teachers of slowing down and coming back to this moment.
Right. Absolutely. So I'd love to talk about like a little bit of the typical approach, because a lot of people are going through it, but they might feel like it's counterproductive, or they might feel like
100%. It does.
It doesn't necessarily feel counterproductive.
Natural, no.
Or even though you're going through it, but that might be some people's options. So I'd love for you to maybe touch on that.
I mean, I talk about that in the first chapter of the book. This will feel counterproductive. And if it does, you're doing it right. Right? Like when we are trying to conceive, we feel a rush against the clock. And of course, like slowing down is like literally the last thing you think you quote unquote should be doing according to culture, according to the fertility industry. However, the typical approach, first thing, is we want to reassociate with our bodies, right? We want to create safety and comfort coming back to ourselves. And this isn't a big ordeal. It's these small little moments throughout the day. So a lot of the time, typically when women come to me, they're caught in the ruminating thoughts of their minds, right? They're racing. They're just like, I want to stop like thinking about this so much, but they're still simultaneously believing every thought they have is important, right? So how can we stop thinking about it if we're still believing that our thoughts are everything? So what my book teaches women and what my work teaches women is how to actually value your body over your mind. And, nervous system is a big buzzword right now in the self-help world, right? But, when we are in a fight or flight sympathetic nervous system response, we are going, 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 moving, 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 feeling like we are in survival. And typically that is because of these thoughts in our minds that are just like, oh, you have to do this, you have to do this, you've got to blah, 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 physical diet, blah, blah, blah. And the typical approach is we reassociate with, okay, this is a thought you have. How does your body feel about that thought, right? What is your body, how is your body responding to that? And so often women will say, I'll be like, okay, what does it feel like to hold that thought? So to give you an example, one of the girls, a couple weeks, she was taking a progesterone, but didn't think it was working. And she was like, I don't know if I still need to be taking it. And so we're like, hey, imagine taking that progesterone. And she asks her body, and she's like, well, my heart's racing, my stomach's in knots, and I'm just feeling really, really tense. And so to me, that's a nervous system response that this is causing some disarray within your mind and body connection. And so we'll say, okay, let's think about not doing it. How does that feel in your body? She's like, well, my heart kind of comes back, restores to normal. My stomach settles and my shoulders are back and I feel like I can breathe again. Right. And so it's this, I feel like we want to create this baby and we're valuing only our minds because of our culture. But our bodies have this innate intelligence. Our bodies, the ones that are actually going to be creating this child. Mm-hmm. So why are we not valuing and trusting what it has to say about the next step you're going to take? Mm-hmm. And so, for example, this is the body compass tool that I use and learn from Dr. Martha Beck. And it's like, okay, well, how does my body feel about this? And so slowly you start to build trust in your body again, right? Because that can be difficult to trust your body after so many years of it not working. But have you actually consulted your body? Or has it just been this transactional relationship of, hey, you do what I say or else I'm not really going to like you anymore. Mm-hmm. Right. And so it's reestablishing that relationship between you and your body as opposed to just chasing those thoughts in your mind. Because when you come back to your body and your body can restore itself to a more calm state, you shift into rest and digest, which is the parasympathetic nervous system, which is also known as feed or breed, which is ideal for conception. So we're finding ways to make the body feel at ease again, even though and so we're not necessarily following every single thought that follows our mind that our mind wants to take us on. We're shifting the value of our minds onto the value of our bodies, and that's how we typically start to restore trust. And then so when the body is in a more calm state, what happens is we turn our prefrontal cortex on, right, which is that part of your brain that has rational thinking, that helps you emotionally regulate. And that kind of builds that momentum towards seeing things with more clarity, as opposed to being in survival and just throwing spaghetti at the wall to see what sticks. Right? That makes sense?
Yeah, definitely. I'm just thinking, like, while you're saying this, that this is it's like not exclusive to like fertility.
Not at all.
Like we've come so far away again, just from being connected to ourselves. And I'd be really, really curious about like the women who go through your program, how their pregnancies and births go. Because I feel like once you start building trust in your body, you're less likely to be coerced or fear mongered, which obviously I see in the birth world so much. And we've like come so far. And like, I just also feel like the birthing system like sets women up to have distrust in their body. It's like from the beginning.
Absolutely, it does.
Right. It's like from the beginning, we're questioning you like on everything. And anytime like you refuse something, we're making you feel terrible. Like there's such a lack of bodily autonomy. And even just the cervical exams in pregnancy leading up to birth, it's like preparing you for getting on your back to birth, preparing you for intervention, and those exams literally mean nothing. They tell you zero information. The only reason to ever have a vaginal exam in pregnancy is if you are being induced for some reason, because it's good to know what to your Bishop score to see how likely induction will go,
right?
Different things like that. But other than that, there's literally I don't understand why it's still happening. There's so much. And then like when you are refusing things, like I just had somebody on Instagram write me yesterday, and at her 36-week appointment, they wanted to do a cervical exam and she declined it. And they said, well, if you decline, since it's your second baby, your cervix is different this time and we need to check it. And if you refuse next week, you're officially going against medical advice. And I'm like, okay, go against it. Like, like if you don't want it, don't do it. It doesn't matter if you're your first or your seventh baby, like your cervix is going to tell you nothing unless you're getting an induction. So I just feel like the system strips you so much of your bodily autonomy and that trust in your own body. And then that leads into parenthood, into our motherhood. Like we're constantly questioning ourselves. Like I did it a lot, even with my first, instead of just tapping into my knowledge and tapping into.
I did it with my first as well. And then with my second, it was like, not again.
Totally. I was like a psycho with my first, and I ended up having to delete the apps on my phone. Like I was tracking every minute of her sleep, every minute of her breastfeeding, everything. And then I was like, you know what? She's a baby. She's going to sleep when she sleeps. She's going to eat when she's hungry. Like this is insane because it was causing so much anxiety. And
that's what I think you have to, that's what you have to, is you're like, okay, it's, it sounds like what you're telling me is like, we're so coerced and conditioned to do what we quote unquote should do.
Right.
Follow what everyone else does. Otherwise you're leaving the pack, right? You don't belong. You're out in the wild, essentially, is what they make you feel like. And this is on the fertility journey as well. And shifting, it's like they don't necessarily, at least I've had some really great health people, and health professionals actually care that their procedure is causing anxiety. And then I've had many who don't. But I think that's what we have to understand is what we're choosing to do. If it causes anxiety, then either we have to respond to that situation a little bit different or respond to ourselves a little bit different. But I think that's such, like, we get this beautiful feedback from our bodies. It might be anxiety or stress. And we oftentimes we'll shame ourselves on top of that for having that. And which is unfortunate. But what if we saw that as feedback? Right? What if we saw that as feedback to create change? And I think you and I did that in our first. We were like, that was feedback from my body and from my feminine, intuitive knowledge that wasn't right. And I give myself a lot of compassion in that first, I became a mom in March 2020, which was like COVID's. And I had a lot of anxiety, not to the point where I needed anything to support me, but I had a lot. And I learned something from that for the second time. I learned to do it differently because I knew that anxiety wouldn't benefit me or my child or my family in general. So that's what it's cool to respond to anxiety or stress or depression with, okay, that's just feedback for responding to myself differently.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I had my first in September 2020. So it was.
Oh yeah, there you go. Yeah. You're right there with me.
Very crazy times. So I'd love to talk a little bit about is there research? I love research and data that supports a mind-body connection with pregnancy. Because you don't really I haven't really heard that, I guess, talked about a lot.
Yeah. So Dr. Alice Domar, she is a professor and I think or not a gynecologist, but a researcher of reproduction and women's health at Harvard. And she opened up this beautiful research center called the Domar Center of Harvard, in which she did a lot of research on the mind and body approach. So what she had done is when she was becoming, a psychologist and a researcher of the field of both pregnancy and fertility, she had realized, why aren't any healthcare professionals caring about the minds and the hearts of these women? Why are they focusing only on the physical aspects of it? And so she opened up this research center and she started focusing on the psychological. She started introducing women who were struggling with fertility to cognitive behavioral therapy, which is, shifting your thoughts to, induce a feeling of well-being as opposed to stress. And she introduced relaxation techniques and meditation and visualization. She introduced social support groups. And this is all considered mind-body medicine, which actually is very, interestingly enough, it seems like it should be just a very natural approach to conceiving, right? Connecting with other women, finding ways to relax, asking for help to support you in those thoughts that are just kind of creating a lot of suffering. And she found that women who were part of a mind-body program, particularly the social support aspect, because it relinquishes so much shame of thinking you're the only one, they were 55% more likely to get pregnant. And that is quite a big, quite a big reading from a research perspective, in my opinion, when it comes to fertility. And she's still doing wonderful research, particularly in treatment centers, of how psychological support during these treatments helps women to conceive. And the research is quite fascinating. I think there actually is a lot of research on mind-body medicine and health. I mean, meditation, for example, has been around for thousands of years. I mean, there is a ton of research on mindfulness in general, right?
Right.
In creating relaxation and regulating your nervous system. And that is, we could say mind-body medicine, particularly for fertility, but I think it's mind-body medicine, particularly for regulating your nervous system. And from a nervous system perspective, when we are regulated, our hormones are restored. We stop releasing so much cortisol, and we start to release things like serotonin and oxytocin. And it's from a physiological perspective, I love research too, and there is lots of research done, but it's more of it's health, it's mental, physical health that these types of mind-body tools, mindfulness, sifting through those thoughts that are creating suffering, finding a support group. I mean, it's been around for thousands of years for a reason. It works. And unfortunately, the issue, and I think you really agree with me, Elizabeth, is we focus far too much on the physical perspective and not on the well-being of our mental health. And as women, we are emotional beings, not in a wrong way. We are meant to be emotional. We are the matriarchs that are here, in my opinion, to help hold space for vulnerability and emotional regulation within our families. And I believe that is what part of this fertility journey is meant to teach you how to do, so that you can be that for your children and for your family. And it lives on for the rest of your life when you learn these tools and techniques that restore your health out of the physical. Oh my God, what do I need to do next? Let me get it done. Do, masculine energy, and restoring back to that feminine vibe of, okay, let's come back. Let's regulate. Let's get back to being more present in our lives. Yeah.
Yeah. I think in general, just even we've just taken on that, like, I'll just speak to like normal, not normal, but typical traditional like roles, right? Like the man's working, the woman's at home. And I think that we've changed so much of what that is. Like the focus isn't just on like caretaking your family, it's on like maintaining the house and putting your kids in 12,000 activities, and you have to make all these cool things for your kids and make sure that they're constantly entertained. And you do get into that like rat race, and we've come so far away of like what it really is. And it's like connection. Like our job is to help our kids learn how to
exactly
regulate their emotions and how to function in the world, which means you need to be a part of the world. Like go outside, go for walks, like just connect in different ways. And something's been like coming up for me because my daughter's 4. And so she'll be 4 in 2 weeks. And so she wants to take gymnastics. She took it last year. She loved it and wants to do it again. But like our neighbors we were just talking to them, and then I was reading comments on something from Instagram, and it was like, if you talk to people who's like, we're giving advice to people whose kids are graduating this year to people whose kids are starting kindergarten. So like your kid just graduated high school, and this person's kids starting kindergarten. It was like everybody's advice was slow down. Like all the comments were like, be present, do less activities. Don't be so busy with your kids. Take time to connect as a family, and just slow down bedtime. Like your kid wants you to linger with them a little bit longer at bedtime. Great, do it, like do it. Those days are going to be gone so quickly. And it can feel, I know for me, my expectations with sleep were completely shattered a long time ago. So like my kids are all over, but like, I know for me, like one of my bigger triggers was sleep, because it's like, okay, like once my kid goes to sleep, then I can get all these things done.
Yeah.
And then they didn't sleep, and then they were fighting it, and then whatever. And then I'm like, man, now my whole day is out the window. Like that expectation. And it's like, okay, but what matters is your kid, like the other things can get done, they will get done, but like let's connect, take a minute to connect, like what's going on. Our kids, the stage of motherhood you're in and I'm in, there's so many things happening. They're constantly developmental things. They're growing so much. They're learning so much. They're learning to push boundaries, to do all these other things. So there's so much happening that's really like what we have to be present for. And we're so distracted with like all these other things. And just that connect, it can start in your trying to conceive journey, learning to trust yourself, trust your body, going through your pregnancy, your birth, no matter how your birthing outcome comes out, because there are times when your birth plan doesn't go as planned. But if you had trust in yourself, if you chose a good provider team, if you felt validated and supported through it, it's like easier to get through that, through plans being changed, and into that motherhood and postpartum journey. So I love the work that you're doing, like that preparation beforehand of slow down, because it is do. Like you're like, you know what? We're preventing. Okay, we're trying, let's have a baby, let's get pregnant this month. And then it doesn't happen. And it's like, okay, well, let's get pregnant next month. And it is that constant go, like, okay, well, last time I didn't do a handstand after birth. Let's try it out this time. Like maybe our timing was off, like so many things. And it is a constant do, which can, it feeds into everything. Like it's a snowball effect, just like rolling forward.
I think we have this huge desire to do, because a lot of us are following and have been conditioned to follow the voice of perfectionism, right? We're like, oh, I have to get everything done. I have to do this, because they're doing this, and I was told to do this. And then I'll feel good about myself at the end of the day if I can get stuff done, meaning our worth is dependent on our productivity and how well we do these things. And so the choice, and I talk about it in my book, is like perfectionism never gives you a pat on the back, like ever. If you check everything off the list and you do everything 99%, perfection is like, oh, but you forgot to do that one thing. And so instead of needing things to look perfect externally with that perfect house and the perfect sleep schedule and the perfect thoughts and the perfect emotions, I love how you said connection. It's like choosing connection over perfection is actually what is going to make you feel full and content and fulfilled at the end of the day. And so I think that was probably the biggest aha moment for me on my fertility journey, is that I would never win playing the game of perfectionism. I would never win on that race to being the best and needing to be the best and needing to be this high performing, high pleasing, high perfecting person. I instead learned to see my worth and actually start to even value my imperfections, even perhaps seeing them as gifts, instead of this horrible, oh my God, I didn't get that done. Oh my God, I really screwed up today. And so that's something that's really helped me in parenthood. It's like my life does not need to look perfect. And in order for my kids to be happy, in order, like, let's be messy today, even if that means messy emotionally, right? Like my kid, we were going to bed yesterday and I was telling him everything I loved him about him. And he was telling me everything he loved about me. And one of the things he said that I didn't even know he picked up on this, but he's like, I like you no matter, I love you no matter what, Mama. He said, I love you when you're sad. I love you when you're happy. I love you when you're angry. And I said that to him last week. And I was like, he remembered that. That had an impact on him to know that he was lovable despite his emotions. And it's just like, I think aiming for connection, like you had said, versus perfection is really profound and has a profound impact on not only us as women, but our children or our future children. So it's a beautiful way of choosing, instead of perfectionism and doing, going, trying to check everything off the list, choosing connection. That is what fills our cup, because connection is here. Connection is right now in this present moment. And that is where true joy lives, true fulfillment, true, okay, I can be here now. Cool. Right?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So in the like women who work with you, like let's talk about the 70% really quick who are working with you and get pregnant within a year. What do you think are just like the keys to their success?
Taking their hand off the pause button and choosing to actually live their lives now, despite waiting until they get pregnant, is a big one. That requires, though, some time to feel safe again in things like pleasure and rest. You know, like I said, we unfortunately, our culture really bases our worth off of our level of productivity. So choosing to see ourselves as worthy in rest and pleasure and joy and connection versus productivity and doing and hustling and making things happen, that takes some time to make that shift. But ultimately what that creates is safety to be in, make plans, live your life now. And that is it really you know, a lot of people talk about surrender when you're trying to conceive, but like that's, in my opinion, it's like surrendering to this present moment, like surrendering to your life now, being in your life now, not feeling attached. What that does is it creates detachment from it needing to happen, right? When you're finding fulfillment in your life now, all of a sudden that baby, that like need to get pregnant, it becomes a happy, healthy desire because you're actually happy now. And so that creates detachment that obviously, you know, a lot of people say like, oh, you hear all those stories of people who adopt and then get pregnant. It's because they're detached from the outcome, and it restores the mind and body with flow, with regulation. And so that's one of those things, definitely, is choosing to live despite trying to get pregnant. That was a big one for me. And then I would say the second thing is relinquishing the shame from the journey, right? It's like shame is such a hard, heavy thing to carry on the body. It feels so icky. I don't know about you, but shame is something's wrong with me. And I mean, when you're on the fertility journey and you're going through treatment and you haven't been trying to or haven't been able to get pregnant within 1 year, you absolutely feel like there's something wrong with you. You have a ton of evidence to prove it from a physical perspective. But letting go of that shame and choosing instead the antidote to shame, in my opinion, is actually deciding to give yourself what you need now, as opposed to waiting until you get pregnant to do that. So, for example, the most profound, shameful comment I had when I was trying to conceive, this internal voice was like, you shouldn't be feeling this way, right? Like, you shouldn't be negative. You shouldn't be sad. You shouldn't be afraid to go to that family gathering. And so in our coaching calls, what we do is we really learn to let go of that shame and start to realize that you as a woman, your worth is not dependent upon your reproductive journey and is not dependent on whether or not you have a kid. And so letting go of that shame and feeling confident in who you are now, even your quirks, even your imperfections. Like, for example, I'm a highly sensitive person. I feel things so deeply. I feel the hard really deeply, but I feel the good really deeply too, right? And so I always used to shame myself for that because I could see people just like easily coast through life, no problem. They wouldn't have the ups and downs that I had. And
Mm-hmm.
I thought that really contributed to my quote unquote infertility. But I didn't need to change that. I needed to change how I responded to that version of myself. I didn't need to change being sensitive. I needed to change how I was treating that sensitive person. I
Mm-hmm.
needed to give space for her. I needed to let herself feel what she felt without adding an addition of shame. Like, think about it. The fertility journey is so difficult, and it comes with such a cascade of different emotions and feelings and sensations. And adding shame to that, adding this feeling of you shouldn't be feeling this way. Like, for example, when your best friend announces she's pregnant and you're trying to conceive, the number one thing women say to themselves is, I shouldn't be upset about this. And so you have this horrible feeling and experience in this body, or let's call it negative, or we could even just call it lots of sensations within the body when you're triggered like that. And most women respond to themselves with, I shouldn't be feeling that way. I should be happy for them, adding to that layer of intensity and ultimately disassociation from the body because we're like, oh, this is too much. I'm just going to go back into my head. And then I'm just going to go add 5 more things to my fertility to-do list next month instead of actually just being with myself. So creating that safety to just be with yourself and even accept yourself, accept who you are, and knowing that your worth isn't dependent on getting pregnant. And I mean, from a physiological perspective, what this is all doing, this is creating this sense of empowerment within the bodies because and the mind, because externally things can still happen. We don't have to control the external events. All we have control over is how we respond to ourselves in those moments. And that's what I teach women to do inside of the program. And that's what I believe really contributes to the success of either getting pregnant or going on to live an incredible life, regardless of your pregnancy status.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's so important. You kept saying like being safe. And again, I just think about kind of like our culture, and it just kind of feels like the way that we're taught even about our bodies. I think from a young age, a lot of women don't feel safe in their bodies because we're not really just even taught about the normalcy. Um, and and I know that like obviously like that creates so much stress on the body, and just even feeling like you're safe is so big. And just hearing you talk too, I'm wondering how many women have you worked with have come back to tell you that this work that they're doing has completely transformed their marriages.
Their marriages, their careers, their relationships, their everything. I mean, I think that's the biggest takeaway after working with me or reading this book is Spenser, like, this isn't just changing my fertility journey, like, it's changing every aspect of my life. And the fertility journey is your catalyst to that awakening into that. And it's just so empowering to know that you can create that internal safety regardless of what is happening externally, which again, like definitely bleeds into pregnancy and labor and motherhood. And yes, marriages. It's remarkable. Particularly with marriages, what I teach women to do is be vulnerable with each other. Like a lot of women who are trying to conceive are like doing it all on their own. They're just like, they don't want their partner to be a part of it because number one, they feel shame, but also it's just easier to do it all on your own, right? You don't want them to have to. A lot of the times we try to prevent our partners from pain, right? But that's not our job. Like that is such pressure to carry. I mean, there's a chapter in the book and I called it Worst Case Scenario Zen. And it's talking about uncertainty, because that's something that we face on the fertility journey and forever. I mean, let's face it. We think that when we get pregnant, it's like, oh, okay, now it's just certainty, coasting through certainty for 9 months. And the volume of your uncertainty actually gets turned up when you find you're pregnant, in my opinion, because now you don't know what's happening to your body. You don't know what this next 9 months is going to be like, particularly if you it's your first child. And so it's called Worst Case Scenario Zen. And I had a conversation with my partner and I was like, we're really happy right now, babe. Hey. And he's like, yeah, life's amazing. And I was like, so then we don't need a baby to be happy. Like we can, it's kind of ridiculous to say that we need a baby in order to be happy if we're happy now. And at first he kind of pushed back and he was like, what are you talking about? Of course we need a baby, right? Because it's been such a strong narrative in his mind and my mind for so long. And then he kind of left and came back, and I talk about it in detail in the book. And he was like, oh my God, you're right. Like, we are happy now. We don't need a baby. Like, it would be kind of logically, it sounds really stupid to think we need a baby to be happy if we're happy now.
Mm-hmm.
And I left that conversation feeling like an elephant took its foot off my chest. I was holding on to needing to provide a child for my husband for so many years, feeling utterly 100% responsible to make it happen. And after that conversation, it just felt equal. I felt like we were a part of this together and we were doing this together and that we didn't need it anymore. And it was just, I think it was like 3 months after that I got pregnant. It's finding these little pieces of us, these little thoughts that create a lot of pressure on our bodies, and finding ways to unlock it, but not unlock it with certainty, but unlock it with an acceptance of uncertainty.
Mm-hmm.
And I think when we're choosing to live and love our lives now, we feel more comfortable about uncertainty and the future, right? We're like, I'm good now. I don't need much. And so that's why it's such a beautiful opportunity, and that's really what I believe the fertility journey is an opportunity. I had a client once say, it's not a hard time. I want to shift that thought. It's an important time.
Mm-hmm.
And that was such a beautiful shift from, this is hard, this is so intense, to no, this is important. I'm going to value this time, but it now isn't life or death anymore. Yes, marriages, to answer your question. It's great.
I got to make that switch, the hard to important, in my mind. That was kind of a light bulb moment for me when you just said that, because whenever I talk about things in motherhood with my husband, I'll use the word hard, and he's kind of like coached me around it. We actually met because we're both certified life coaches and we went through the same training.
Cool.
But sometimes he tries to like coach me and I'm like, just say, Liz, that
yes.
sucks. Like, don't coach me right now. But he does try to coach me and shift my mindset in some of those things, because it's true. Like, I do need it. Like, yes, the season of motherhood is hard, but what if I replace that with the word important? Like, this is so important. The season of my life is so important. That's why I don't want to screw it up. That's why I feel so much weight. That's why I, like, not that it's so hard, it's so important. I value it so much. So thank you for that.
Love that.
I'm gonna take that for
absolutely.
I use the word hard a lot and I try not to. So then I try to substitute. I'm like, it's hard, it's difficult. I'm like, I need a better word, and important is such a better word to use, because it's true. So before we wrap up, I would love for you to maybe just say something to the women listening who are like, okay, Spenser, you make it sound like if I just stargaze and like walk barefoot in the grass and, whatever, like take deep breaths, then I'm going to get pregnant. Like, what can you say to those women that are like, listen, I've tried everything too. We're doing IVF, or, or you're just making it sound so easy and I've already tried everything. So why would I feel like I'm pretty connected anyways. Just the people who are maybe listening who are like, okay, like, I'm not sure about this.
Yeah, I think this is a beautiful metaphor of the fertility journey, and just of femininity in general is labor. And so we have this excitement around labor, but all these qualities of labor, like the messiness of labor, the pain of labor, the pleasure of labor, the presence of labor, that these qualities are also part of the fertility journey. And when you say, oh, you make it seem like if I just go outside and do that, I really it's this is the hardest thing for us to do is slow down. The hardest thing for us to do is see our worth regardless of our productivity. It's easy to just check things off the list. This work is incredibly uncomfortable as we rewire your brain and your body to prioritize things that completely go against what our culture believes. So I think perhaps that is a thought that, oh, this sounds too easy. Try it and feel the discomfort of it. Like, for example, like women, we are the givers traditionally, right? We give. But actually, an innate quality of femininity is receiving. When the sperm is released, the egg just kind of waits, you know, and the sperm are the hustlers. They they move, go. And so it's like, for example, yesterday I was receiving something more than what I was used to from my husband. And it was so uncomfortable. My nervous system went into like this alarm response. It was like danger, danger, because we're pushing past our normal capacity for joy. And when we do that, it's really, really, really uncomfortable. And so this work, although it creates an easier life in the end, you do have to go through hard. You do have to relearn how to sit with your pain, as opposed to just going back into your head and adding 5 more things to your to-do list and analyzing the data and trying to numb yourself out from actually feeling the things you've been avoiding for a really, really long time. And so I get that the mind-body work sounds simple and easy at first. It is actually very, and what I'll actually label it as, not necessarily as hard, but it is deeply uncomfortable to come back to ourselves and our presence and our bodies when we've been living in our heads and our to-do list for so long. And the discomfort, in my opinion, is a sign that you're doing it right. So don't expect rainbows and butterflies if you start incorporating this work. In fact, expect alarm bells and, oh my God, this is too much. I don't know what to do. But, you know, one way I depict it is we're just increasing our capacity for receiving. We're increasing our capacity for uncertainty. We're increasing our capacity for risk. All of these things, I'm increasing my capacity for pain. And these things are scary, they're new, they're not culturally normal. And it takes time, it takes patience, and it takes a compassion for this experience. So that's what my response to that would be.
You said it's not culturally normal, but yet it's going back to how we were meant to live. And our culture has made it so not normal, but we're meant to live like such a slower life. You know, we're meant to live more in community and with that support, and where you weren't doing it all in your house, because we didn't live in houses like this. We had community to where, you know, the older kids were watching the younger kids, and somebody's preparing this and you're doing something else. And you know, you're probably breastfeeding somebody else's kid. Like it's just in community, you know. And so now it feels overwhelming, and it is uncomfortable to receive for sure, but that's life. Like, you know, you picture how much you love to like give to people. Well, people want to give to you too.
I know, it's so true.
And so, and how would it be if you're giving to somebody and they're like, no, and you're like, just take it, like just receive it. And you know, and people want to do that, you know. I think, and for me, like with, you know, I think that's where faith is tied into it with me too. You know, I think that that's like a big aspect too in receiving as well. But yeah, I love the work that you're doing. I feel like, you know, I keep going back to those statistics because they're amazing. So, I mean, it's also showing the work that you're doing obviously is helping and working and changing lives. So, before we wrap up, where can people find you, follow you, connect with you, get your book, take your course, all of that great information?
Yeah, well, they can go to Amazon and search Fertile Ground and buy the book and get it delivered to your doorstep the next day. Actually, I had a woman send me a DM yesterday, and she said she sent me a positive pregnancy test. She's like, I have been trying to conceive for 6 years. I've had 2 miscarriages, multiple failed treatments, and the month I finished your book is the month I got pregnant. And I
Wow.
was just like, these seem made up. Like they seem made up. They're almost getting like to that point, but it's pretty remarkable. So yeah, Fertile Ground on Amazon. And my website is www.spenserbrassard.com. Spencer's with an S and not a C. And you can learn where to work with me on there. And yeah, it's, one thing you said about receiving, it's like the more I receive, the more I can give.
Mm.
And I love that's really supported me because I know, it's like we can sneakily tell our brains, hey, you can give more if you receive more. And I mean, imagine if, particularly of pregnancy and early postpartum, if you learn to receive like support and love and asking for what you need on your fertility journey, could you imagine how different pregnancy, labor and delivery and postpartum would be?
Totally.
Like just receiving all the support, all the love, all of the guidance without any feeling bad or feeling guilty. I mean, that's what I did with my second pregnancy and postpartum. It was blissful, like truly.
Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's amazing. Awesome. Well, I will include all of the links in the show notes. I just want to thank you so much for your time and energy with us today. And I'm excited to refer people to your book and to your website. So thank you for coming on the
Awesome.
podcast.
Thanks, Elizabeth.